Hello and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where in the world you are. Really, really good to welcome you all back. Thank you so much for coming to another episode of the Timber Exchange webinar and podcast series, where we, as usual, discuss the global lumber market and we invite guests from all around the world so that you can hear directly what is happening from key decision makers. Our guest today is none other than Mr. Jesper Egsmark, Head of Group Sourcing and Category Manager for Stark Group. And we will begin shortly, but first, a small message from us, the organizer. This webinar, as usual, is organized by Timber Exchange. We have very quickly, over the past 2 years, become the premium and leading global lumber market tracker. In one single dashboard, you can track more than 14 markets and 400 market signals. Recent updates include that we now track the CIF and DAP price of 170 products in 26 different markets. We track log prices in all key markets and even local sell prices in MENA and China, as well as Russian production and inventory levels. And we have a very new, interesting feature or module as well, which includes shipment manifest insights for US, India, and soon MENA. And yesterday, we even launched our iPhone app. So if you are a registered member and you have your account, go to Apple App Store and download it and log in, and you can have then all the data that you need always on the go. But the flagship of what we do, aside from this webinar and podcast series, of course, is the Global Timber Price Survey, where we track 170 products in 26 markets every single month. And we publish the results on the 15th of every month. And when you contribute to the survey, you're doing something very, very good. Because when you contribute, we will donate from our end 1 week of meals for a family in need. And our goal is to reach 1 million meals in the next 12 months. And it is very possible. It is very realistic with your support. And this is what your support looks like, because we are able to fill almost all global price markets that we do track. And on a final note, we have something very, very important launching very soon. US real-time lumber delivery data. Which counties and states are lumber deliveries going to? Where is the lumber being shipped from? Is it North American? Is it US lumber, Canadian, European? What's the volume of lumber being shipped? And also, which products are most or least in demand? And how or where is demand shifting? Very interesting things indeed. If you would like to learn more about this, send us an email or a WhatsApp message and we'll let you know. And now, without further ado, let's welcome to the stage our honorary guest and a very good friend, Mr. Jesper Egsmark. Hello, Jesper. How are you today? Thanks so much for coming on.
Hello, Mia. Well, thank you so much for being on and getting the invitation to join your webinar. Happy to be here. Glad to be here. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So, Jesper, let's jump straight into it. For those that don't know you, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been in the wood industry or wood world?
Wood world. Yeah, well, it's been a long time, and yeah, it's counting up to 36 years by now, which a lot of it has been spent in Stark Group, different positions, obviously. Recently, I was as a local category manager in Stark, Denmark, but from April last year, I joined Stark Group, being head of timber as a category and sourcing manager. So now I'm trying to get, definitely increase the understanding and guidelines for all of the countries in which we operate in Stark Group. Yeah, so more than a year now in this position. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And Stark is a huge company, but for those few that maybe don't know Stark, what does Stark do? Where do you operate?
Yeah, well, Stark being the number one builders merchant in Europe, 8 billion euros turnover last financial year. So we operate in UK, being Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and the Nordics, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and Norway. And then on top of that, Germany and Austria. And in most of the countries in which we operate, we are the biggest, so number one in the respective countries I just mentioned. Somewhere regionally, but in most of them, number one. All right, so it's a big company with a lot of history. Founded in 1896, but it really took off in the 80s. So it's originally a Danish company, but now during the zeros, tens, and currently owned by an investment fund called CVC Capital Partners. Yeah, so that's the headlines. More than 10,000 employees, and I think latest figures 1,100 branches across Europe. So that's in short. Stark Group. And yeah, finally our head office, Stark Group, that's in Copenhagen. That's my, that's my home office. However, I work from Aarhus, the second biggest, where the Danish head office is located.
Really, really interesting. And what makes this webinar so interesting is you have a global supply chain, you have distribution all across Europe. If anybody has the pulse on the market, it's you. So I'm really excited for this webinar indeed, and I'm confident that the audience is as well. So we're going to discuss the market in a little bit, but first, roughly how much sawn timber or lumber does Stark Group handle each year, and how wide is your supplier network?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the volume. It's when we combine. We have a lot of different categories within the same, basically. So we call it TBM, timber-based materials, right? But if we look at the timber part, that is being, softwood in general. So spruce and pine. We take moldings as well, and then we also have some hardwoods. But in total, it's roughly 1 million cubic meters a year. We are, it's one of the main category areas in all the business units, maybe except Germany. Germany is a little bit special. It's highly specialized, so that's kind of different. But in the Nordics and the UK, it's a very key part of what we do. So when in terms of platform, it is global. But probably get a little bit deeper into that question a little bit later today. But of course, it's commodities. You don't truck it too far. That will be too expensive. So first of all, I'd say that UK, Denmark hasn't got sustainable production to cover the demand. So UK and Denmark's mainly imports. However, the other countries, they are very local, okay? Huge production and export, so they cover domestic demand and then exports as well. So and lately, due to things we can maybe discuss later, we've engaged with both South America and North America, especially a US exporter and also Canadian, where we bought some construction timber. So I'd probably evaluate on how that is even possible later today. But it's very interesting. It's always about, and that is also my job, of course, looking into windows of opportunities. Things change. We've learned, and you know this very well, prices are different on different markets, although being quite close together. there are differences. There's a different, can be different supply and demand balances in the different markets. So we always, or I always try to monitor that as closely, and actually now in cooperation with you, Amir. So trying to get as much information as possible, not only from our suppliers, different data sources, but most importantly, my colleagues in the different countries, which has deep knowledge on not only their own markets, but obviously also other markets around Europe. So painting that big picture on what's actually going on, because what we've learned is that the timber is not local. What happens locally depends on what's globally happening can have an impact on our local markets.
Oh yes, absolutely. It feels now that the market has a butterfly effect almost.
Yeah.
Uh, a small change in one market will eventually reverberate, I believe that's the right word, throughout globally. And the market has become so agile and so flexible, and it almost self-corrects
Yeah.
over a matter of months until
Mm.
that change has had its
Uh,
full toll.
the products will find their way to the consumers. Despite any current conditions, there might be an obstacle here and there, but eventually um, it will find its way. Recent webinar you held, much to my surprise, there was, Russia is a good example on actually keeping up production despite the fact that Europe is buying nothing. That's interesting. That's just an example of products will find their way.
Yes.
So that's
So,
interesting.
so where does most of your timber today come from, and has that shifted over the last few years?
Well, to be honest, there are movements around, and there are cross-border activities, and that is also one of the things that I definitely look into at any given point in time. But the overall picture, I'd say, remains more or less the same. With if you look at the specifications, it's the same in the UK, Denmark, Sweden, it's 45 millimeter. Norway and Finland 48, and then Germany something completely different, right? So that kind of narrows down the potential of trading across borders. It depends also highly on the sawmills. How do they meet the specifications for the different markets, right? And also, as I said, there is some homegrown activity on the UK market, which means that I think somewhere between 20 to 30% is produced in the UK. More or less the same, I'd say, in Denmark, and the rest of the countries, again, very, very local, or more or less 100%. But again, depending on market prices and developments and trends, there are differences. So when again you have the window of opportunity, we use it, and then we ship timber across borders. So yeah, well, that's as short as I can
Okay.
put
What
that.
what sort of certification or traceability does Stark expect across its supply chain with its suppliers? And has it changed any over the past period?
Uh, it has. Definitely. Maybe we'll cover that, also extend the discussion on that topic a little bit later, but no doubt about it. Okay, EUDR, it's coming, whether you would like it or not. And you need to adapt, and you need to secure that you can get the required documentation. That being said, as it is today, it's not decided, not that I know of anyway. But there will be a process during the next couple of weeks where we will be probably be more certain on what we actually need to deliver in terms of required documentation from our suppliers. Okay, so we are currently actually onboarding, and we are in the process, and we're not stopping it, despite what's going eventually to happen in the EU or whatever they say. We will be prepared, and we ask our suppliers also to be prepared, because better go ahead, right? Because eventually it will be implemented. That's my belief anyway. That can of course change. Um, so, and in terms of sustainability and carbon emissions, it's just, legislation has new legislation across Europe, and especially in Denmark, of course, which I follow closely. There's new requirements in terms of LCAs, and carbon footprints when you make new builds, which is actually quite there's a bit, it really requires you to think twice when you build something. And this will, you talked about the avalanche effect. It will eventually impact the business globally, and certainly in Europe or within the EU. Meaning that you need to consider, and that is also, by the way, one of the long-term effects. Well, I would definitely foresee increased demand on timber and timber-based products globally, right? So how do you manage this? Not only in terms of EUDR, but also if the EPD, environmental product declarations. Okay, they can vary from producer to producer and country to country. And we do require that because we offer our customers in Start Group what we call the climate log. It's implemented in 2 countries and one more to follow soon. What is it? Well, it's actually a service for our customers where you can see the complete carbon footprint on what you just bought for your building project. Okay, so we do the calculations for them, so they do not need to trouble themselves with it. So, and that is just one highlight. There's many highlights in terms of carbon footprint for a selected product. We also explain to our customers, okay, you choose this product, but you can actually choose another one. Might be slightly more expensive, but it's got a better declaration. So you help them achieve the goal of meeting standards and legislation in the different countries. So quite proud of it, actually, and it's a great tool. But that's changing, and I do foresee. We haven't seen a huge impact yet, but I will definitely expect it to be a commercial advantage if you have the best EPD in the business, because people will want the best declaration, right? So, just an example, quick. All right, I had an inquiry from a Danish building well, what do you call it? Building producer or whatever, house company, and they said, okay, I would like to buy my construction timber from you, Jesper, but it needs to be from this mill. Okay, why? Well, they have the best EPD in the business, and we need it in order to meet the requirements in our building project. So, but that's just an example, and I do expect we will see more of the same thing in the future. So it's being sustainable will be a commercial lever in the future.
So construction companies have requested even specific mills.
Yeah.
Wow.
True. Yeah. Yeah. It's been a journey throughout the last couple of years, and what we were faced with mostly was generic calculations, right? So it was for the total business, not highlighting the potentials and not the improvements at selected mills, maybe the self-supporting energy and solar panels and electrical trucks and stuff like that. Everything, in order to get the best possible carbon footprint on the products that you produce. And as I said, customers are asking more of it.
Very, very interesting. I'm sure that that is something that will be asked in the Q&A session. Moving on to the market, which is why we're here. How would you describe the market right now compared to this time last year? For example, demand, pricing, stock levels. What changed in your opinion?
Well, not much. Again, I mean, just spent a week in Sweden, among other places, Karlstad. So very much expectations met, meaning that usually this time of year is quite depressed. Okay, and usually this time of year we talk about, okay, we did not see the expected growth this year, but next year, I promise you, will be different. So that is usually the conversation this time of year. But to be honest, and not joking about it, I mean, it was actually pretty much the sentiments from last year's cars that are being the same, reduced. Well, that being said, also I realized that there were a few people there. Okay, so not so much going on as usual, indicating that sawmills are struggling heavily on the earnings and trying to cost save on the event. So markets, getting back to the markets, I mean, it's it's quite depressed. It's more or less flat, plus minus 1% as I see it in general. I heard I got some intelligence from the southern parts of Europe, which is also quite depressed. And look at the on the US market, prices are almost year low, and house permits and starts are also very very much on the unusually low for this time of year. So actually, I think it's looking maybe a bit worse than last year. But then again, we have a over availability on both spruce and pine, as I see it. We have also discussing a lot of sawmills claimed that they were reducing their production. But it's not yet to be seen in the figures, right? There's a reduction in the spruce, but it's more than outweighed by the production in pine. So overall production remains slightly higher than last year. I do expect, based on the intelligence gathered the last 10 days, that we will begin to see reduction in output when we see the November and December figures. Absolutely. But the forecast is much brighter than the current situation, I have to say. First of all, as everybody knows, there is a big plan in Germany, investment, 800 billion euros investment plan. The Prime Minister or Chancellor is saying build, build, build. And there's what I normally say an incubation period from where you actually decide to increase funding for the building sector until you actually see it in your figures and you see the markets pick up. So when in terms of Germany, we do not expect that to happen. Maybe not first half, but second half, 26. Okay. So on UK market, it's more or less the same. It's flattish as it is right now, but we do expect growth as well next year, 2026. And the most positive, I have to say, is the Nordics. It's inflation under control. Sweden leading the way in terms of reducing interest rates. And the HORT, what is it called? HORT, the government's incentives to make people be more active, not only new builds but also renovation, is in place, and people have money. So the big question, I have to say, is that's the global uncertainty. And that is partially or mainly also the fact why we expected definitely bigger growth 25 that we saw. Okay, it was disappointing in 2025 for different reasons. You have wars, you have terrorists, you have a lot of different things impacting consumer confidence. So that remains relatively depressed, but getting better. And following the different countries around Europe, we do see some improvement in house builds and renovations or RMI. So I mean, it's going in the right direction, Amir, but it's just going not fast enough. And I do definitely expect it to pick up in 26 at some point. So that's the market situation as I see it. I think the only market maybe, and maybe you can confirm that or not, or correct me if I'm wrong. Middle East is maybe picking up, but it's a low cost market. So will that impact prices in Central Europe and Northern Europe? I don't think so. That every producer around that's not really any plan B, at least not for the moment.
One follow-up question on what you said, and I'll comment on the MENA in a second. The current activity level around Europe, how would you compare that to pre-COVID? Is it far below, slightly below?
No, it's not far below. No. I mean, we're talking. It's not all disaster here. I'd say it's more or less the same. We're not that. No, slightly below. Okay, so we're not there yet, but we're getting there. But there's so many things within our industry changed. I mean, we're missing the 10 million cubic meters from Russia previously coming before the war, right? That's obviously got nothing to do with COVID, but I mean, the consumption has decreased, as much, so that there's no real need for it, except we're missing some 6 meters, but that's a different story.
Very, very interesting. And MENA, if we start with Egypt, definitely doing a lot better. I heard yesterday that there's an insane level of construction activity there, so that's really, really good. That's why fillaries and shower boards are priced at almost $300 per cubic meter. It's really high prices. Saudi are seeing increased prices, and they're seeing also from the figures in social housing and contribution to GDP, construction is increasing, and even actually mortgages, loans for construction or loans for homes are increasing in Saudi. And in UAE, very small market, but the building permits are also increasing.
Yeah.
Algeria has been a bit so-so, but as we discussed in Karlstad, they recently got the central bank recently started issuing import quotas for companies, ranging from between €500,000 to €3 million for companies to import timber over the next 6 months. And the biggest companies got even €4 million, I'm hearing. But still, €4 million over a 6 months period isn't a huge amount either. But it is also a smaller market of around 1.5 million cubic meters, I believe. So
we could hope that's the start of the avalanche. I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, I believe so. So if we discuss then the market, there have been so many issues that the industry as a whole has dealt with: forest fires, spruce bark beetle, inflation, high energy costs. So what are the issues that are having the biggest impact on you, your suppliers, or your customers right now?
Well, basically we have no issues, but that's only due to the fact that there's a great availability on timber in general. But that being said, this will definitely impact our industry on the long term, as I see it. I talked about the need for reduced carbon footprint earlier, so that will increase the demand for timber in general. And when we do see markets pick up, there will be a mounting pressure on availability. I have no doubt about it. It's just a question, when will this happen? Okay, that's first of all. And secondly, you can combine all of you said into climate change, I think, more or less. Will that have an impact? Yeah, absolutely. There will be limited availability of raw material going into the future. We see it already in Germany, right? There's a lack of availability of raw material. On spruce in Sweden, we have also seen some difficulties in getting the raw material, especially in the beginning of the year. Still so, and that is also part of the reason why I guess that prices are very high on raw material, declining a little bit lately, but still high. And add to that the push from green organizations transitioning production forest into biodiversity forest. There's also a big push there. So if you combine, what I said in the beginning, the increased demand and the reduced output from the forest in general around Europe, of timber or raw material. Um, this is not short term. This is not Q1, Q2 next year. Okay, this is looking further into the future. So the balance will shift at some point. I do believe in 26. And then I actually think that this will continue. What is good on the other hand, if we can sustain the raw material rolling into our sawmills, is the big investments. In the they increased the production capacity, so that's a great thing, and also they can efficiency. Okay, in terms of efficiency, a lot of the investments that has been made, making them more efficient, or making the potential to earn money better. Anyway, so I mean, a lot of things are happening. I mean, but I do not think it will have an immediate effect within the next a couple of quarters. I don't think so. It's more term, in relation to production in or cuts in production. But poison in when we talk balance, the interest, well, I've experienced anyway from North and South America. I mean, there's some big sawmills over there. I mean, and if they start, shipping into Europe, that could also disrupt the balance, right? So,
Sure.
yeah. So and all I've said so far, I have to emphasize, that is if things are status quo. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So everything can change in a couple of weeks. I have no idea. But anyway, if things stay as they are for now, that is the outlook or forecast.
Let's discuss your customers and the demand side a little bit. So
Yeah.
how are your main customer segments performing? And have any
Yeah.
markets or segments surprised you for better or for
Yeah.
worse?
Yeah. Well, there are differences. Absolutely. Well, Star Group is mainly business to business driven, right? So, and that segment has been quite stable. There's no big surprises there. It's quite stable. But if you look at the private consumers, there's been good activity actually. Unfortunately, it's not a huge part of our operation. So, but that is what the intelligence I've gathered throughout the last couple of months, that private consumers, and also looking internally, it's doing quite okay. And when you look at public or enterprise, government-funded activity, it's also yes, I would like to come with some shocking figures here, but it's actually also quite stable, and that is also, I do believe or expect to increase in 26, driven by, well, everybody calls Germany the motor of Europe, and anything good happening down there, that is definitely your avalanche effect. So that will have an impact on Europe in total. Absolutely, 80 million people down there. So that is going to be important.
Can you mention any examples with markets that have performed better or worse than
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if sorry, Germany, very depressed for a very long time, but now it seems to be bottoming out and getting better, right? UK, strong first half 25, but then slowed down. Several reasons, but I'm not sure of all of them. But it's a little bit down at the moment. But we do, if you look at the need for new builds and renovation, it's massive. All right, so it needs. I mean, it's like not logical if it does not pick up at some point, and that could also definitely be next year. The most positive is absolutely Scandinavia by far. Denmark has been outperforming the rest of the Nordics for very long. There was a short downturn, but Denmark really, the fast recovery, I'd say. Whereas Norway, Finland, and Sweden has been, it took a lot more time to recover. But again, we see, if you look again at consumer confidence, inflation, interest rates, new builds, and permits, it's going in the right direction. And that is also why I am assuming or forecasting that 26, and I'm saying it again, will be better. Yeah, and then anything can happen, right?
We feel the same. We have a webinar series which we call the Forecast Room, where we tell the story of the market and we analyze. We look at all the data that we have, more than 400 market signals, and probably now even 500 something. Identify the best performing signals and actually summarize that. And there are good things happening. Sure, the early part of the supply chain is with low costs or production or inventory is very choppy, prices is very choppy. But if you look towards mortgages, construction permits, as you mentioned, almost everything is looking up actually.
Yeah.
Especially on the key markets. So even China, if I remember correctly now, home prices in China have stopped falling, meaning the bleeding has stopped. And at the same time, they're building almost 25% more. That's a small hidden golden nugget that most people don't know.
Yeah, and again, talking about asking the consumer, the reports I get anyway, and this is overall picture on all markets, which is 60-40. If you count those being positive or kind of flattish, that's 60%, and the negative ones, that's roughly 40%, right? So more positive than negative, and that's worth to remember.
So China's doing better, MENA's doing better, parts of Europe are doing better, Scandinavia and Germany, as you said. So things are restarting.
Yeah,
so that
reboots. Yeah.
So that brings us to the next question. How would you describe the current mood in the market? If you want to answer for demand side and supply side separately or combined, and accordingly to that, have you adjusted your approach when it comes to pricing, inventory, or risk?
Yeah. I cannot go into details here, obviously. But yeah, well, that is definitely one of the things that I try to follow closely. Okay, this is the movements and the moves in the different markets and forecasting. Okay, as I said before, the timber market, that's not local, that's global. And in order to understand and try to create a clear crystal ball, you need to know what's going around all over the world in order to anticipate. And yes, we do make adjustments in terms of, well, for example, now we it's low practical issue. We do expect an extended time of downs in connection with Christmas and New Year. They will probably, some mills will definitely extend a week or more. So the availability will be reduced. So the need for stocking up in December. So it's just an example. But also, obviously, I mean, I try to forecast where do we see prices moving, the trends up or down, and of course adjust our stocks accordingly. All right. So that's not new. Okay, that's something we constantly do, and that is also why the need for information is rising, if you can say so. Because in the beginning of my time in Stark, I had basically 5 years where prices went up or down 1 or 2%. All right. Okay, that was just every day. That's just how it worked. But ever since COVID and a lot of other things happened, it's been really volatile. So the need to adapt, we have had the need to adapt. And in terms of adapting, it means, okay, we need to know what's going on. Otherwise, you will not be able to make any reliable forecast or recommendation. So yes, we do definitely try to adapt to current situation and trying to get that feeling on what's going on in not only local markets but all markets. Yeah.
Very, very interesting indeed. We'll be open the Q&A session shortly, but first, we were discussing previously certification,
Yeah.
traceability. So are there any new regulations or trade issues on your radar that could shape the market or the way that you work?
Well, yeah, well, I touched upon that issue a while ago, right? Talking about EUDR and EPDs. So, there is a risk, absolutely, depending on the documentation needed, or whether you're importing from high or low risk countries. But eventually, I'd expect some, suppliers. Well, if they're not able, they are out. That's how it is. I mean, and you need to face it. It's not something that we invented, right? It's just something that you need to apply, and you need to supply the right documentation. And if you cannot do that, well, we'll not buy from you. It's as simple as that. So, will that potentially make a change in the ways of working and the flow of goods, coming into European Union? Yeah, but to my, not surprised, but I'm really happy that our current supplier platform are really involved, and they're really getting ready. So when time comes, no question, we will. I don't expect any issues. Honestly, I do not. But that being said, there are probably potentially a lot of suppliers out there in the world who are not ready, and they will be out. They will not be able to deliver into the European Union. So that will potentially again change our ways of working, and the platform that we use. But yeah, again, you can always discuss the need and how and when. But I mean, it's a fact that I do believe that this legislation is being implemented. It can be that we will have 6 or even again 12 months in order to prepare, but eventually it will be in place, I'm sure.
Very, very interesting. And on a final note, before we jump into the Q&A, and to the audience,
Yep.
down below there is a button called Q&A. Ask your questions there to Mr. Jesper, and I will be moderating them. Of course, within the guidelines of competition law, otherwise your question will be unfortunately ignored. So, Mr. Jesper, on a final note, to summarize, what's your outlook for timber consumption and the economy for next year?
Yeah, I basically said that already, at least my expectations. But I'd say from flattish, depending on which market you look at, to positive. It's not huge increase in demand, but let's say 5% more. And that can be significant for some, of course. But overall, I'm moderately positive on 26. And again, I have to emphasize, if nothing out of the ordinary happens, like a war with Taiwan, I don't know what can happen, but a lot of things. I do see increased demand for timber and timber-based materials in general, and economy recovering, if we can say so. We've had some very, very difficult years, but I do absolutely see an end. There's light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So, yeah, I have expectations absolutely on development on going into next year. On the short term, no, it's nothing is. I don't see any major changes, not in the supply and demand situation. I do believe that most markets will be continuously depressed. Um, um, and saying that again, with the current stock situation, both among suppliers and the industry, I cannot see any huge pressure mounting on anything on the short term. We'll see what happens next year. We need some balance in the market in order to see what's going on.
Very, very interesting indeed. What a session it's been, but it's not over yet. We're going to enter the
Nope.
Q&A session very, very shortly. So to the audience members, don't be shy. Submit your interesting questions, your questions maybe that you've been shy to ask that you want to find out an answer for. Write your questions down below. But first, a small announcement. And here are some examples of the new and interesting data that we provide. Here you can, for example, see local prices for Egypt in Egyptian pounds, how the market is performing. It's really, really interesting indeed, because this is and we have this for multiple markets, not only Egypt. We switch the examples every time. And it's really interesting to see, because this is how the end market, the industrial use, what they are paying for. This is the earliest possible market signal that you can get. It's really critical information. We also started tracking the production and inventory in Russia. It's falling, but not maybe as much as people think it is. And something very interesting recently. So we track the sentiment in the global market. We ask 100 plus market leaders how they see prices developing over the next 3 months in their home and primary international markets. And sentiment has really changed. We run the survey every 2 months, and the joint purchasing or production capacity of the respondents exceeds 30 million cubic meters per annum, almost 10% of global production capacity. So quite significant. And this is also something very important that we track. But in my opinion, one of the most important indicators globally is the global inventory of lumber. How much is readily available all around the world. And as we see, it's usually between 20 and 22 million. And when it passes above that, the market becomes grossly oversupplied. It's very thin difference. And ever since then, it's on the way down. And on the platform, you can see, of course, the latest data. And some interesting metrics, actually. So on the price survey that and this is the latest data, actually. So the products that increased month on month for the October survey that we just published, 52% of products increased compared to 42% of products the previous month. And the products that are up since January compared to up now compared to January this year are 52%, whilst in the previous survey it was 47%. And the markets that saw an increase month on month were 60% compared to the previous month of 31. Previous month report were 31%. And the average change was 8%, but the median was 2%. And the top products, the winners, were MGP, S4S, 2x4, not 2x5, apologies, rough rejects, and export shawlboards in, for example, Australia, US, and Germany. And the biggest losers were, for example, tongue and groove, spruce saw falling, packaging, redwood OS 63 millimeters in, for example, Morocco, India, and the Netherlands. And we do now three webinars per month, so don't forget to log in and watch. And now let's start the Q&A session. The first question is, you mentioned North American supply earlier. What opportunity do you see for Starkroot there, and how sustainable do you believe that demand will be?
Well, in terms of sustainable demand, I'd rather say there is a window of opportunity right now for different reasons, but will it last for a year or two? No, I don't think so. So stable? No, I definitely say. On the other hand, production capacity is the US do not produce enough, so they are not self-sustained. They need to import as well. So in terms of availability, also going into the future, it could rapidly change. So it's not, no, it's so U.S. Exporters, is that a stable one and one to count on for the duration, long duration time? I don't think so. No, absolutely not. So it's just interest for now. Whether we will last, I don't think so. Canadian, didn't ask about that, but you said North America, I think so. The Canadian interest, I think that could potentially last for a very long time. We have 3 more years with the current administration in the White House, and if things does not change significantly, we will probably it will probably be interesting for the Canadians to widen their customer platform to mitigate any potential risk coming from the current administration. So that that's if you ask me, that's definitely more long term. Also highly depending on will the U.S. market turn, which is very depressed and stocks are high. So when will that turn? That's also can impact, of course, how Canadians see the potential in other markets.
Yeah,
Hope that answers the question. Yeah.
absolutely. The U.S. housing market is today as I see it, the only market which is performing negatively or
Yeah.
significantly negatively,
Yeah.
and that is the wild card. And what does it depend on? The economy. Well, of course, when there's a government shutdown, people can't afford anything. Of course, when you deport nice, hardworking people, who's going to build with the lumber, and so on and so forth. And this 50-year mortgage might sound like a good idea at first glance, but if you actually make the calculation, the amount of interest that you pay more on your house over the 50 years is huge. It's ridiculous. It's basically a ripoff.
And if I'm not mistaken, now you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understood, one of the things imposed by this big beautiful bill was implemented recently. Okay, impacting 30 to 40 million people in the US market. So now they have reduced subsidiaries, meaning that they really need to consider, okay, can I send my kids to school today, or should I go buy groceries? Is that difficult for some? So definitely no room for investing in buildings or renovation at all. So I mean that in Karlstad, there was I was not attending. I was in a lot of meetings. However, during the conference, it was mentioned that they do expect prices to increase on the U.S. market next year. I'm sorry to say, anything can happen again, but I don't see it. I don't see that happening. But again, it's a wild card.
You said subsidiaries, but I think you meant subsidies.
Yes. Sorry.
It's okay. You're in a very big corporation. It's easily to change the two words.
I'm not native.
Yeah. And then I heard in North America also there's something about two non-Americans speaking about the American economy, about the healthcare, Obamacare, and that will also be something else that adds a significant amount of costs to the average American, and insurance and these sort of things. Yep. It's just piling up and piling up and piling up. So there's going to be very little disposable income for the average American if it's not negative, actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So how in the world, based on that information, do we see increased activity on the US market and followingly prices slowly moving upwards? I don't see it.
One interesting question here. With your significant purchasing power, have you ever thought of expanding into, for example, the MENA region?
In terms of acquisitions and I just to make absolutely sure I understand
as Stark is so big and purchased such a significant volume, have you ever thought of another part of the world and distributing lumber there?
Oh yeah, okay, that's concise. Honestly, I don't know. That's the honest answer. Okay, for certain there's Stark have grown significant and made huge investments in order to be prepared for when the market turns. Recent years, so we feel definitely well prepared. But our investments has been mainly in local acquisitions and renovations. Um, um, we call it branches of the future in the UK and flagship stores in the rest. So we opened a lot of them. Okay, so this is in order to make one-stop shops in all the countries in which you operate. So that's where the money went. Okay, not into maybe considering buying something, for example, in the Middle East. But interesting thought.
Indeed. Any more questions from the audience? I see a lot of smart people in the audience that are very globally active. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Of course, they'll be asked anonymously. So don't be shy, submit your questions. Or maybe the webinar was so good that we already answered all the questions that they might have.
Maybe. We can hope so.
I believe so. Well, then without further ado, exactly on the hour almost, Mr. Jesper, it's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you, and thank you so much for coming on the show and describing and discussing so openly how you see the global timber market. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you so much, Samir. Very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Until next year. See you.
Until next year. Bye-bye.
Thank you to the audience as well. Bye-bye.